What's it been like seeing your studio like grow and evolve over the last decade? You guys have done so much work for hire, specialty projects, commercials. Like, what's it been like seeing this technology and your studio evolve?
I love it. I mean, Dave and I at breakfast this morning were just talking. He asked me the question of like, what was your favorite period of the studio? Because it's almost 30 years now, and there's these distinct stages of growth. But we both really liked this period where we did a bunch of Star Wars cinematics that Dave was directing, and then I was directing a bunch of Batman cinematics, which I love comic books, so it was that. And then we got a bunch of artists in that we all were really good friends, and we would work hard and play games while renders were happening at 3 a.m. A Quake game would go up, and we'd have a big LAN party for
I remember that's what we're talking about, Bruce Money. Like, it was pre-Deadpool, and I can remember how long Tim had been pushing that boulder up the hill to try and get that movie made. It was like late that night, waiting for the coffee to brew, and I'm like, brother, this is it. There isn't going to be any success better than this place. Like, every day, like, we'll go in 100, 150 artists come to work, make awesome stuff. It was like the best. It was like the dormitory of the disaffected, like, who just wanted to make cool shit. It was, and I love it. I miss that work from home has sort of spread our workforce across the world, but man, nothing like very fun memories of making all that together. I wish we were all still back in the building making it.
Do you guys still have to do job bids for work for hire, or do people come to you now? Are you turning away work because people want to work with you so much? Like, do you still have to do that stuff, or is it much easier now?
Oh, dude, I wish. No, we still have to bid, and I would even say it's more competitive than ever, because oddly enough, there's so many good studios out there, and in fact, Love, Death, and Robots in Secret Level, it puts us in this position where we're hiring our competitors. They're also our friends, and they do great work. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a little part of me that said, "Wait, man, what if we did all this work ourselves, and then they wouldn't be able to compete with us because we'd be so awesome?" But no, I really like working. I mean, literally our competitors, Digit, Unit, Plattige, Goodbye Kansas. Yeah. All doing shorts.
The sing for yourself in Hollywood never ends, unless you're maybe like Jim Cameron, like, or Steve's, like, it's just endless.
Even then, he just sets the bar higher. And
when you guys were started Secret Level, there's a lot of IP here, a lot of mixed IP, Games Workshop, Capcom, Sony. What was that? Was that an approval process hell, trying to get everyone to, approve these models, what they look like, thumbs up, thumbs down? Like, how was that process working with so many different intellectual properties?
Well, the art approval process is fairly easy. We're pretty good at that because we do game cinematics, and that's very, very similar. But thanks to Amazon not being greedy about rights, we were able to put the show together pretty easily. Amazon has the rights to put these episodes on the service forever, but they don't control these properties. They didn't try and do a land grab that would prevent them from, possibly doing a movie or a television show in the future somewhere else. And if they had, this show wouldn't exist. The lawyering would have been too intensive. So I credit them with having the vision to let us put the show first, and acquisition a distant. It's way in the rearview mirror.
I know he said the lawyering made the lawyering easier than almost fucking impossible would be.
It made it possible.
Yeah, it was not. Doing anything new in this town is incredibly difficult. Like, there's a line from Ratatouille that I love, which at the end of the movie, which is like, the new needs friends. Because man, like, it is like, if you can't point at a model that's been successful, like, folks want to run a mile away from it. Like, so, like, kudos to
Luckily we could.
Amazon.
Luckily we could with Love, Death, and Robots. We could go, look, it's Love, Death, and Robots, video game.
What's the most ridiculous feedback you've ever gotten on something you've worked on? Like, it's a critique or a note or a revision?
Oh man, it's tough because as soon as I say it, it's so crazy that they'll know it was them. I'm trying to think of one that we can have a good laugh about, because I could list them off easily, but it'll piss people off.
I would say somebody challenged us to come up with a game that would be, or a cinematic that would be so memorable. It would stand the test of time, and it would become one of the great game cinematics in the universe. And Jeff Fowler, who is the Sonic director, who worked at Blur for years, and I came up with this idea for a zombie apocalypse in tilt shift. And we thought it was the best fucking idea ever and met the criteria, the gauntlet that had been thrown down exactly. And then we were so excited to pitch it, and we went in, and the developer said, nah.
No thanks.
and then we did a pretty standard cinematic. But luckily, we were able to save it from the dustbins of history, and it became Night of the Mini Dead in Love, Death, and Robots. But
I won't give it. It wasn't like a bad note, but I mean, I remember the freedom we had when we were doing the first Old Republic trailers, because they weren't making any new movies, and then when we made the new Star Wars trailers, the latter ones, they were making the films. And I, as a massive Star Wars fan, there were some scenes that are on the cutting room floor that I remember like so badly wanting to do that I think fans would have loved. But I remember like, and I don't think I understand why it's not an obnoxious note, but it was like your Sith can't be more powerful than ours. And I was like, damn it.
I got pushed back at the time but they let me do it. Was that where she force blocked the lightsaber?
The saber.
Yeah. You're like,
I actually dug up some obscure book that happened in, and I remember telling Roger Evoy, here it is.
What's the biggest misconception of an outsider looking at Hollywood in general? You guys spend a lot more time in Hollywood space lately. Like, what's a big misconception someone might not realize about that system and what it's like to work in it?
I'll build off what
is glamorous. It is not.
There is that, but I'll build off what you were saying earlier, where, I mean, I work with Jim Cameron, I work with David Fincher all the time. And, I'm friends with Guillermo del Toro and Louis Leterrier, and people think that it's easy to get a movie made or to get your next movie started, or, all you have to do is walk in after you direct Deadpool and say, this is what I want to do. Not true. It's difficult every time. It's always about money. It's always about movie stars. It's always about timing, and nobody gets a free ride. So you're only as good as your last thing, but even that doesn't guarantee the next thing. There was a director listening to David Fincher, and I talked about how hard we tried to get Heavy Metal made. And when we were done, he walks over and he's like, listening to you guys, I don't know if I should feel good that I don't get my projects made that easily, or lose all hope entirely, because if you guys can't get projects made, what hope do I have?
You hear these stories, like the misconception I would say is you hear these stories like, man, it took me 10 years to get this movie. And from the outside, you're like, oh my God, that seems crazy. How could anybody persist? That is the norm. Like, if you get it from inception, like, hey, I'd like to do this, like on the screen, and under that, I'd argue you did it quickly. Like, it takes so long in this town to get to get enough sort of momentum behind you to get that. Every now and again it happens quicker than that, but man, that is more often the case than not.
But when a movie you have a hands in makes like $500 million, does that help, or does Hollywood just want to see more of what you already did?
They definitely want that, but it just makes it possible. I mean, before Deadpool, it wasn't possible, because I directed Deadpool when I was 50. So trying to get something like Love, Death, and Robots. Yeah. And trying to get something like Love, Death, and Robots off the ground, or much less this, was impossible until that happened. And Deadpool was helpful for all of us. It put a lot of attention on the studio, and Dave got to, I'm not saying this was because of Deadpool, but, Dave went and did Bloodshot, and Jeff Fowler went and did Sonic 3.
Oh yeah, what do you mean? Like, that's like what else is in that building over there that $700 million came out of? Like,
it's a big misconception about the use of CGI and visual effects in Hollywood films and projects to a consumer.
I think the frustrating thing about that is, like, I've certainly had this a lot, is like they don't see it as a way to tell bigger, more inventive stories a lot. It's like, well, that you can do it cheaper. Like, how to do it, so you can cut, all the corners that can be cut. And and when I hear that, I'm like, man, we're not going to work well together. It's like not why anybody gets in it. Like, we certainly want to stretch every dollar we can to put as much up on screen as we can, but it shouldn't be the mission statement. Like, yeah. So I don't love that. I do love, like, one of the things I feel like there's pushing towards a moment in time where like super like high-end animation deserves some level of theatrical moment in the sun. I feel like we try every decade. Yeah. You know, like all the cinematics that we've made over the years, like, and every decade somebody tries, whether it's Final Fantasy and Beowulf, and like we just need I think it deserves more than it's getting.
I'll say that it's a funny thing that any director will tell you. It's that if you're in pre-production and you say, I need $50,000 to do concept design that will help me efficiently plan a sequence, a big visual effects sequence, the studios will go, you know, I don't think we have that in the budget right now. But in post, if you ask for $5 million to fix that visual effects sequence that you didn't plan properly, they're like, yeah, no problem.
Priorities.
As long as it's something they want to see.
It's just they can't imagine what it is in the beginning, or that, you know, it may be lost or not needed. And in the end, it's clearly needed to finish it, you know. But it happens so often that every once in a while I have to go, you know, it keeps happening. Should we just like assume that it's going to happen again on this one?
Are you allowed bigger budgets now? Because this is several years ago. I remember reading an interview with you where you did Deadpool, and Deadpool was like a shoestring visual effects budget. Like you undercut all these major studios. That was one of the reasons it got made, because you were like, we could do this for a fraction of what these other studios are doing.
Yeah, bigger budgets. I don't know. If you ask somebody else that question, they would say, yeah, Blur gets big budgets or decent budgets to do this stuff. I would say we do not, simply because we don't make any money. We don't make any money.
You always expand to fit the fishbowl, right? Like it doesn't, like every time somebody gives you more money, you just put more up on screen, like as you should, in my opinion.
I was showing Secret Level to Robert Kirkman is here at CCXP, and obviously the Secret Level stuff is all hardcore 3D graphics versus Invincible is 2D, and Kirkman was like giving me shit for the budgets we get. And I'm like, but I can't do the game cinematic stuff the way it does require a decent budget, because the people that do that, the machines to render it, it's not cheap. And I would still say we don't get huge budgets. I think we're pretty as efficient as we can be and still produce quality work. Dave would like to have more money. I know.
Dave likes money. He's good with money. Can he have more money?
When Tim flew me, I remember being in South Africa, and Tim's like, all right, now we're going to talk about the money part. This was like over 20 years ago. He's like, I'm not going to pay you a lot. They're like, you're going to have enough to live. I can't remember what it was. But he's like, but you're definitely not going to be doing coke off your Lambo in my parking lot. And I'm like, all my life goals, you just took them away from me right there, Tim.
Only one boat, not two boat money, just one boat money.
I knew I'd taken it too far when this artist said, you know, I wish I didn't have to pay rent. Can I just buy a van and live in the parking lot? And then I could, you know, get to work early. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like a horrible person that I've created someone who feels like they have to do that to do their job effectively. I said no, to my credit.
You can live in the office. You can live in the office, but not the van. My last question for you guys is, how does, for all those aspiring creative directors, creative cinematic artists, directors trying to get into this system, what advice would you give to them? You already said, Tim, it's a long process, can take decades. Like, what advice would you give to those aspiring future filmmakers out there?
I would get a copy of Unreal and make my own short. You know, we hired this guy, John T. Knocker, because we saw his fan-made Star Wars shorts that were beautiful. So that's what I would do. The barrier to entry is pretty low. You need a computer, but the software is free, and you can make some incredibly impressive stuff. And you could use that as your calling card.
I would, and the perseverance thing is real. You're going to get many, many, many no's. And you just got to, I remember the first pitch I ever get, and I was pitching Bad Robot for something. It was the worst pitch I ever gave in my life. I didn't even know what I was doing there, but like I vowed to myself that the next one, every pitch since then, I will leave the room and they will say like, that's the best pitch I've ever heard, right? And you just got to know that like the first one probably won't be great, and you get better and better, and it is just perseverance. It really does. I know it's cliche, but if we all look back on what we were trying to get made 20 years ago, I would laugh at some of the shit I was trying to do. So you just got to, it is a journey for sure. But I agree with Tim, like it's easier to make things now than it was. That's why I started animating. I wanted to film, I saw Neil Blomkamp's short films, these little animated things he was making in South Africa. Charlotte Copley showed them to me. They were the most like, it was pre-Toy Story, and Neil was like doing animated robot rebellions, and I was like, this is fucking amazing. And I was like, I'm gonna do this animation thing. and then shortly after that, Miller found me, and we've been doing shit ever since.
Someday I might
find a way to tell your stories economically. Like
I might have to pay Dave at some point in the future.